It has been a while since I have made a proper guide for anything on my channel, and it's about time we make changes to that. So starting today and moving on for about the next month and a half, I'm going to be grinding out as many guides as I can, and we are just going to go full send. As always, there will be time codes in the description below, so if you just want to skip right to the parts of the video that you need for this guide, feel free. However, I'm just going to do a quick little channel update. In the pinned comment below, there will be a link to a post I made a few days ago, in which there will be a new series coming out on this channel, in which you guys will decide the combat style and boss combination that I do, and the most upvoted comment is the one that's going to decide the video after that one as it gets uploaded. Right now on the post, it looks like I'm going to be doing ranged at Sanctum, and it will be very much a more raw look at me just trying to either get through the content or talk about a method that I do in general, as well as some other things that might come up, but I think it'll be a fun little series nonetheless. So feel free to click on the link in the pinned comment that will take you to the post, comment something if you don't already see it, or if you see a comment that has a combo that you already would like to see, just go ahead and upvote it. Anyways, that is enough rambling. I am just going to get into this guide now. Magic Camp at ED1 has gotten pretty good recently. However, there are a few changes with abilities that I do need to go over. Notably, if you have Gchain, you used to be able to cast that on a target and then use it with something like Dragon Breath or Detonate or Tsunami. And what would happen is, well, you would get a secondary hit on any target that was Gchained. However, this is no longer the case as Dedo just hit every target that it normally would. However, Gchain will still work with Corruption Blast, even though it is an AoE ability. It's an AoE bleed, but for some reason it works with that. And the main thing that really helps out on the run is the Wand special attack Soulfire. Greater Chain with this is extremely strong, and I believe I went over this in more depth on my Magic DPS guide, so feel free to check that out. Specifically the one where I am updating for the tier 95 dual wield weapons. I don't remember when this change to Greater Chain was made, however it is an important note, and if you see me do it in the run, that is just because I have a big muscle memory of Gchaining all of my abilities, so it's a good disclaimer to get out of the way. Now speaking of weapons and gear and whatnot, let's just take a quick look at the inventory. It is a pretty bog standard Magic Camp setup. In fact, it's a little bit more basic than some of the ones you might see in, say, a PVME rotation or a PVME guide, as I don't have any elite tectonic swap for when I'm outside of Sunshine or anything crazy like that. It is just a pretty standard preset. We have the refined anima core of Sliske, and what you can do with this armor effect is on any of these pieces, you can just right click, select effect, and then pick the Tuska's Might effect, and that is a free 6% crit chance. You do have to own the War Priest equivalent, meaning if you don't have it, you have to suffer through a pretty obnoxious minigame for 4 hours to get all of the points required to buy the War Priest, but it is a one-time deal, so I would personally recommend it. However, this will probably change in future updates. Maybe Tomb of Amasket, when that comes out, will drop some new magic armor, who knows. Other than that, we just have kind of standard magic everything. We have some Cinderbane gloves, which on poisonable targets, they are best in slot. Enhanced blast diffusion boots. If you have regular blast boots, that's perfectly fine. If you have a bunch of GP to waste, feel free to get the enhanced ones. Grim, I still believe is best in slot regardless, just for the Sunshine rotations. I just have standard perks here on my Roar of Awakening and my Ode to Deceit. I do have a Nexus here to hold all the runes for Bone Shield and possibly Darkness if you want to use that. I personally don't when I'm style camping. However, it is nice for just general damage reduction so you don't use quite as much food, but using Darkness is a personal call. Reaver's Ring, in my opinion, is a more fun ring to use. I don't know if it's better than Channeler's Ring in terms of overall damage. From what I understand, Reaver's Ring has a fatter bell curve, so you have a higher potential damage, but you also have a higher minimum damage. So sometimes you win, sometimes you don't. Whereas if you use something like Channeler's Ring, it is a thinner bell curve, so your average damage possibly is higher, but you don't have the potential to just absolutely pop off. And when I'm magic camping at ED1, I'm mostly here for fun, and I think it's a lot more fun to just run Reaver's Ring and hope for the best. In this EOF, I have an Iban's Staff, And in this one, I have a G staff. Nothing fancy there. It's just kind of bog standard magic setups at this point. I don't use ABS because they took away the recursive crit. So I just rock these two EOFs and the Zuck Cape. If you don't have the hybrid Zuck Cape, it's not going to matter too much. Just run the standard Zuck Cape. They function the exact same. And in the inventory, the only switches I really have are my FSOA. I have a Coroming swap. Now I would bring more swaps. However, these weapons are still not dyeable. And I have a bunch of switches here, but I am not willing to bring these and then hover over to make sure I know which one I'm equipping. I'd much rather these be dyeable or individually keybound in some way, which dyeing weapons is the easiest way to do in game currently. So if you have different tiers of offhand swaps and you want to bring a flanking swap, flanking is nice on Sanctum. You can use it when it's doing that water spout attack, and on Siru, you can stand behind the head and do flanks there. On Masuda, when he's doing his spin, there are opportunities to flank, but it is kind of RNG dependent on where he is. And on the crystals, when you first attack them, they are susceptible to flank. So if you have a switch and it's easily configurable for you, feel free to bring it. Lunging is the one I would be more likely to bring, as it is probably more useful. It buffs the damage on combust, and it is very useful on static targets. So the crystal, Siru's head, Sanctum, and then there's a couple other places you could use it, but since these aren't dyeable yet, I'm not bringing them. I keep it very simple with just a Coroming 4 swap. If you don't have Eruptive 2 on your Coroming, it's not a big deal. Other than that, I just have some wrist wraps for dealing with Siru and the crystals, some mines for Siru. I have an acceleration power burst, which is nice for zooming around the dungeon in a couple parts. I have kind of the standard setup for rune pouches here. Pause the video here if you need to see the rune makeup here. And other than that, it's pretty self-explanatory. I have some Guthix brews so your stats don't drain ever, and I have some blue blubbers so your adrenaline doesn't drain while you're using food. I have an overload in the preset as I'm not really running anything close to sub 8 while style camping, and I just bring one in general for faster banking. The weapon poison here is also for that reason. I do this for faster banking specifically. So after I kill Siru, I can just teleport to wars just like this. I can then run over to the bank, hit load last preset, it'll automatically load it, and then I can just apply the weapon poison, drink an overload as needed, grab prayer, and run over to the crystal. Now the last thing I'll talk about here is aura selection. Sometimes I run Majorat, sometimes I run Maniacal. It just kind of depends on how I'm feeling. If you want to get extra spicy and have a little bit more fun, you could go with something like Supreme Invigorate. However, I think that's kind of wasted on Magic Camp specifically, so I would stick to either Majorat or Maniacal. Alrighty, let's do an hour. In the bank preset, I use the Quarm and the Lantidime incense sticks. I don't really use Spirit Weed because we're going to use a Calg Demon. And then I'll just scatter some Powders of Penance. Make sure I'm bonfired, hit the Ogre Flask. And we are pretty much done with this bank preset. Go ahead and load our main preset for the hour, and let's get off to the races. Alrighty, we'll grab some adrenaline, make sure our weapon poison's applied, make sure we're overloaded, prayers are on, make sure everything's good to go, and we'll go ahead and start. Now what I like to do here is I bladed dive to this tile, and then you can just hit surge from there, and then you'll come over here and run down this way, and then click back on the stairs to hit a diagonal run. And then here I'll just hit a corrupt blast, Gchain a wild magic, and then just kind of debreath whatever's left. And if anything's left, maybe hit a rack. And then here I use my power burst of acceleration to kind of just get all the way down to this corner as quickly as possible. Maybe pop a magma tempest and then Gchain. Charge up a detonate release with a Nami. Now the Gchain doesn't do anything there, but it can help with the some of the minions that like to stay up a little bit on HP, like they end on like 100 HP or so. But that one, I'll just corrupt the middle. Maybe hit a wild magic. Usually I hit Omni Power, but I was distracted and hit wild magic instead. I'll just kill these guys off and surge down. Now here is where I do kind of the first major difference. Make sure I'm anticipated, surge, greater chain this guy, and then just hit the wand spec. And it'll pretty much always refresh here. Then just kind of wait for them to die, and then maybe these guys I'll give an Omni Power just for fun. These usually I'll just detonate or maybe do like a Corrupt Blast, but should be fine. And then just kind of surge and dive as needed around these R-hats. About this point, I will go ahead and devotion and hit anticipate. Maybe hit a corrupt blast, Gchain into a combust just to have some extra bleed stacks. We'll lift some adrenaline. And then here I will run in a little bit, surge dive to this tile, drop a vuln bomb in a smoke or a sunshine. Gonna just improv a magic rotation here. Nami, FSOA spec, swap spells. The thing I forgot to do was activate my Grim. Make sure your Grim is active. And just kind of improv some damage here with maybe a two-hit fix into an Omni power. G-Conk into a Iban staff and hit a Tendrils. If I say G-Chain or G-Conk, if I say G-Chain over G-Conk, I usually will get those words confused, but should be able to see what ability I'm using based on the animation and whatnot, so apologize in advance for that. And here, I'll just res this one. We got hit by it. It's not too big of a deal because the R-hats, the reason we stand there is so the R-hats line up and kind of get lured behind, but when you have to move over for the cloud, they obviously are going to show up and start hitting you. But with the first boss dead, we'll just go ahead and dive surge down here, surge across. Use a corrupt blast and maybe G-Chain into a wild magic. I usually pray melee here until I'm out of sight of that Honto. And here I just devotion. I have a corrupt blast there. I hit G-Chain out of force of habit. And then I usually hit those guys with a Deado Nami. This is the second part where I excel pot, just kind of moving around. This guy I'll usually wild magic into a D-breath. It usually gets him. Surge over here. Run up to the stairs and click around this tile and then dive over. We hit a corrupt blast. G-Chain into a corrupt or a combust. And here what I'll do is I'll run up either side. And then corrupt this guy here in the center. And then G-Chain the center guy. Again, helping with the HP a bit. And then release with a Dragon Breath. Sometimes I'll release with something else. Again, there's a lot of G-Chains in here that you could probably skip. Although this one you can't because we're going to use Omni Power on these guys. And then maybe G-Conk that guy. And here I'll Surge, Ice Auto, Corrupt. And then here I'll hit Magma Tempest into a D-Breath. And that guy will die as well. Surge Dive over here and then Greater Chain these guys for a Wand spec. And then target cycle whoever's left and kind of just basic from here as they're dying. Surge dive over. We hit a corrupt and charge up a Deado and release with a D breath. They all died, so can just surge down. Click over here, walk on this tile, freedom, surge dive. Target cycle with a smoke cloud into a sunshine, and just kind of improv a standard sun rotation from here. Hit your Nami, hit your FSOA spec, G-Conk into something. Get a wild magic, and then we got an early spin, so I'm just going to devotion here. And then maybe G-Conk into an Omni. And just go for attendees right off the bat. Into an Iban staff. I four-ticked an Iban staff. Luckily, it went through. I'm kind of surprised it did, but that was already phase 1. Now, with these Thrashing Waters, I just basic them, and I do stand next to them for the damage reduction buff. You'll see it up here in the corner. It helps reduce damage for phase 3. Technically, this is phase 2, but I don't know. I don't really count it as a phase. It's just kind of slightly obnoxious, but it is what it is. And we'll just keep killing our Thrashing Waters. And around 60%. Sometimes what I'll do is when this is on 55%, I'll go ahead and natty on the next Thrashing Water that spawns. Sometimes I don't, just depends on how I'm feeling. I will usually try and eat up to full at some point during this. as we don't really need run throughout the, or we don't really need food throughout the rest of the run. We're on 50, get 55 from this guy. And here I'll go ahead and hit a natty and just kind of start pre-building from here. If you want to still MD them, you can, not a requirement. You can even attack Masuda, maybe get some debuffs on him. Drop your Sunshine on the stairs. And we're all ready to go. So just hit Nami, FSOA. If you have to kill another Thrashing Water, go for it. It is definitely worthwhile. Maybe hit an Omni Power into attendees. I'll swap if you want. Sometimes I forget, so it is what it is. You want to end on some high adrenaline, just so you have enough to deal with this stuff, at least for devotion. And then here what I do is I surge dive. Usually it's a bit cleaner than that. And I'll push off devotion for a little bit just until I run over. And then here I'll just kind of do a corrupt blast, Gchain and combust. Then when you kill those three, it unlocks this gate and you can just kind of excel pot through. Run over here and then drop a Sunshine. Maybe hit a Smoke Cloud into a Nami. An ability into an FSOA spec. And then here we can go ahead and hit a divert, get a big adren buff. Now the thing with Siru is magic can do fast 1 cycles. However, it is not consistent, at least from my testing so far. I'm also not on extremely, I'm not on optical or optimal, words are difficult. I am not on optimal relics. I don't have Zerk Fury on right now. So that could be part of it, but I'm just going to go for a slow 1 cycle here. Drop some mines. Hit a wand spec and just kind of relax here. If I figure out a fast 1 cycle rotation, I will definitely share it with you guys at some point, update this guide. So that one died pretty easily just with some threshing. And here I'm just going to toss a few more bleeds on this. And what I'm waiting for here is I'm watching these little shadows, the little blobs, and when this one spawns, that's when I go ahead and drop the Sunshine with an APOT. Hit a Nami, FSOA spec, and then just build up from here. Go ahead and toss on Exsanguinate, and then just make sure this crystal dies before the Ubers start healing. It should be pretty easy, even if you're just basicking. And here, I'll go ahead and Surge. Make sure it's Smoke Cloud, make sure it's Vulned. Get some extra bleeds on it. Maybe here hit a Wand spec, and then charge up and detonate, and then release with attendees. I forgot to drop my mines, but it should be fine. Omni into an Iban staff, and it should die. And that's an ED1 run. It's pretty straightforward, at least for me, who's kind of comfortable with this dungeon. If it's your first time running through with magic, definitely take it easy and try not to turbocharge through it. But this is just how I run the dungeon with Magic Camp. I keep it relatively straightforward. There is a decent amount of time save on this run, as I was going through it slowly, trying to explain everything I'm doing, as well as I still have bad muscle memory with casting Greater Chain on the abilities such as like Dragon Breath or charging up Detonate or Nami. It is just so ingrained in me right now to do that. Hopefully I can fix that in the future, but it is what it is. Now I mentioned in the run that I am using non-optimal relics. We can go ahead and teleport out, and I will show you what I am running real quick. And for this dungeon, I run Luck of the Dwarves, Conservation of Energy, and Blessing of Het. Now, I run this because I don't want to ring swap, and I am terrified of seeing a cheese and tomato Bada, especially a doubled one, in any elite dungeon. I've said this in several other elite dungeon guides, but maybe this could get tuned one day to where this is only like 50 relic power, or we can get a second side over here with skilling style relics and have them all active at once, and maybe Luck of the Dwarves could go over on that side. But until that change, I will continue running these, and Blessing of Het just fits in here. It takes up the relic power nicely, and having a little bit of extra healing on some lower healing foods like Super Guthix, Bruise, and Blue Blubber blue blubbers is always a nice thing. But hopefully this guide was helpful. If it did help you, leave it in the comments below. If you have any questions, feel free to leave it in the comments below. Again, in the pinned comment below, there is a link to a post that I made discussing the new series that I am doing. It has the details in the post. Feel free to go over and upvote any comments that have any boss and combat style combinations that you would like to see in the new series. Or if you don't see the combo you want yet, feel free to comment it yourself and maybe it'll get upvoted. However, that is enough rambling in this guide. To thank you very much for watching. Your viewership is greatly appreciated. Have a wonderful morning, evening, afternoon, nighttime, whatever it is, wherever you are, and I will see y'all next time for the next guide. Peace.